To have back with us Sevim Dağdelen, who is a Minister of Parliament in the Bundestag for Die Linke, the left in Germany there, and is a spokeswoman for international politics and disarmament. Sevim, thank you so much for being back with us.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you. How are you?
Doing very well, thank you, and very happy to invite you. In your country, Germany, a lot of discussion there now about the growth of the military, 100 billion euros. They're going to buy the F-35 now, allegedly. Looking at this buildup, you know, some are saying that this is peace through strength, that this is good, that you need a big military and, you know, to deter Russia. Do you think that this expansion of the military there and militarism in Germany is moving us in a good direction or a bad direction?
Well, let us look to the facts. The German government now, after the invasion of Russia in Ukraine, decided to spend 100 billion euro extra for military and rearmament. And these are the largest expenditures since the end of World War II in Germany. Besides, annual spending is supposed to be well above NATO's 2% target. And this would make Germany's military the top spending military in Europe, even way larger than Russia's. And NATO countries are already spending 18 times the military budget of Russia. And neither has this been able to prevent the war, nor will another rise in military spending stop the war. Russia's invasion and the reaction of the West threatened to drag us back into an old world of arms races and force deployments of proxy wars and economic conflicts. And on the other side, does this mean that rising armament expenditures will lead to further social cuts and a further impoverishment of large parts of the people? I mean, like we heard now from Africa, from Ghana, while our societies become more and more socially divided in Germany or in Europe, and whole population groups are socially excluded, the military-industrial complex is the main beneficiary of this development. And since the invasion, stock prices of defense contractors in Germany are at the record high, and a revived Cold War will ravage domestic budgets in Europe and in the US, and really wasting hundreds of billions on weapons is distracting us from real security threats such as climate-caused catastrophes, and will bind resources needed to address inequality. And this is the main challenge we have: climate crisis, inequality, hunger crisis, for example. And we shouldn't waste so much money for military.
You know, I'm curious about what this war, the massive wave of refugees that it's bringing across Europe, what do you think it'll mean for the EU and its unity? And on top of that, do Germans want Ukraine to join the EU? We hear increasing talk about the possibility of Ukraine joining the EU.
I think, since it was 2008, it was a really big mistake by Bush, the US president, in Bucharest at the NATO summit to give Ukraine the illusion and the hope to get Ukraine as a member of the NATO. There was no need to do this, and it was totally surreal. It was not real. It was not a real option at all, a serious option. That was a big mistake. And now we're going to have the second big mistake. And this is to give Ukraine the illusion it could be a member of the European Union. You know, the European Union and the NATO, they do have a common point. That is no membership to countries who have territorial problems, domestic problems. We do have one member state of the European Union who do have has a serious problem. This is Cyprus, for example, because of the military invasion in the north of Cyprus by the Turks since middle of 70s. And that's a really serious problem, and we can't get rid of it. And that's a big danger to have another such problem in the European Union. And I think the best would be to have neutrality for Ukraine and security guarantees for both sides. That would be a better reason, a better solution for all the players at the moment in Europe.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry, Eugene.
No. Go ahead, Rania.
Well, I was just also wondering, on top of that, because obviously Germany before February 24th was being condemned by the Americans and the British hawks for its reluctance to support war. And then after the invasion, it performed a bit of an about face, and now it's supporting these punishing sanctions on Russia. It's increasing its military budget. There does seem to be a lot of unity among the Western countries about escalating the war. So I'm curious, are there any voices in Germany that are trying to de-escalate this war?
Well, there are some voices, but the problem is at the moment, of course, because of this war, and it started by the Russians. Because of this war, all the followers, all the fans of the policy of the détente, by started by the former Chancellor Willy Brandt and his assistant Egon Bahr, having dialogue with Russia for a common security architecture in Europe. They are now very calm, very silent, very threatened as well by all the military Atlantists. That's really a serious problem, and that's a problem we are now facing, and I think it will take a while. It will take a while when these voices are coming up as well again. And I think they can at latest when the war stops, when we have a ceasefire, when we have negotiations, and I really want to underline this. We do have a lot of aggressive voices at the moment, aggressive voices in the US, aggressive voices in Germany and in Europe, who are now calling for more sanctions, calling for a no-fly zone, calling for more arm deliveries to Ukraine. But it's all very dangerous. I think we must be very clear. This proposal, like a no-fly zone, would be a suicidal proposal. A no-fly zone will lead us to a World War III. And besides stationing of NATO troops, for example, on the Russian border, in the Slovakia, in Romania and Lithuania, does not help the people of Ukraine at all, but increases the risk of an expansion of the war. In order to avert the risk of an unthinkable direct conflict between the world's two largest nuclear powers, what is needed now is not increased military funding, but a return to intense negotiations. We need more voices for negotiations. Even before the invasion, the left in Germany has consistently, and a lot of people, the majority in Germany actually, called for a diplomatic solution to the crisis in Ukraine that respects the international law and international borders, even though it may be unpopular to point it out. The expansion of NATO to Russia's borders provided the context of this crisis, of course, and that's a problem. As long as this war is going on, the problem is that a lot of voices who are for dialogue, for peace, for a common security architecture in Europe, they are calm. I mean, still we do have, of course, but the thing is, the atmosphere is warmongering, like it is in the US.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's an important point. And I think the point you raise about negotiations and voices for peace is key because, we're basically being told that, at least in the United States, that the only solution now is essentially a new Cold War. That even if the conflict stops tomorrow, that at this point it's too late. There's nothing that can be done. People in Europe can never live together. We're going to go back to what we did, for 60 years. I'm sure you disagree with that, but I wonder how you respond to that, because that's what most Americans are hearing, is that even if the war ends tomorrow, we're in a new Cold War. There are no solutions and there's no diplomacy that can help.
No, what's the alternative to diplomacy? The alternative is war. The alternative is a World War III, and no one will win, and no one will survive. That's insane. That's really insane. Whoever is going to propose such a thing is insane from my point of view. We have to insist in diplomacy. Neither sanctions nor arms supplies will end the war in Ukraine. The only way to do so is to seek a diplomatic solution by negotiation. Like the US intervention in Iraq in 2003, Russia's invasion of Ukraine is against the international law. But however, Western politics need to understand supplying more arms to Ukraine will only lead to an escalation of Russia's invasion and will be paid not by the US, not by the German, but will be paid by Ukrainians with their lives and the destruction of their country. Russia's military is by far superior, and Ukraine will not be able to win this war. And all those who cry or beg for a NATO intervention, they shouldn't forget Russia is a nuclear superpower like the US. Actually, it's more. It's more because it has more than 6,000 nuclear weapons, rockets. And Russia is not Yugoslavia, which was bombed in 1999. The NATO war started on March 24th, 23 years before today. And Russia is not Iraq. The US aggression started in March 20th in 2003. Russia isn't a small country like these two with a weak army like Iraq and Yugoslavia. Therefore, the arms supplies to Ukraine by NATO will extend military fighting, lead to an intensification of Russian artillery and air attacks, and cost even more lives. Instead, we need to urge both parties to agree to an immediate ceasefire and seek a diplomatic solution. The ceasefire could be followed by a compromise settlement, including Ukraine's neutrality and the security guarantee for both sides. And but the thing is, as we have the war and these warmongers everywhere on the both sides of the Atlantic, few words fit these times better than the dictum of the French philosopher and socialist Jean Jaurès over 100 years ago. Jean Jaurès said, "Capitalism carries war within it, like the cloud. Capitalism carries war within it, like the cloud carries the rain." And in order to prevent further damage, we need an really intensive debate and cooperation of progressive forces on both sides of the Atlantic who do not want to be taken over by war politics and oligarch capitalism on the both sides of the Atlantic.
Mm-hmm. Well, really appreciate that and really appreciate your voice. We're following your tweets at the very least here in the United States. It's good to have strong voices for peace there. And thank you and all of your colleagues in Die Linke for, being willing to come and help us understand all these thorny issues. Sevim Dağdelen, a member of parliament there in Germany representing the left, Die Linke. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me, and take care.